All right. Can you guys see that? Thumbs up? All right, perfect. Thank you. All right, so as I said, I'm Shakira. I'm just showing this slide here just as a disclaimer for a lot of the stuff that I talk about. We have extensive details in all of the notices of funding opportunity or NOFOs or notices of interest that come out about these particular supplement programs. And so if there's anything that I don't talk about here, it's just because it would take us hours to go through all the details that are in those documents. And so this slide is up to encourage you guys to make sure that you're reading through all of the documents before you apply to anything. Make sure you're covering all the eligibility bases, all of the required information that needs to go into the application and things like that. And so like I mentioned, I'm really just going to try to focus on our 3 supplement programs. I'm going to start with our diversity supplements, then I'll transition to our reentry and reintegration, and then I'll end with our life event supplements. The last 2 supplement programs, the reentry, reintegration, and the life events are relatively new, and the diversity supplements have been around for a little bit longer under NIH. And so these 3 supplement programs represent administrative supplements. They aren't the only administrative supplements we have, but for NIGMS, they are the 3 that are around every single year. Sometimes, depending on our budget, we do have other smaller supplements that are available. Usually, I think we call them our summer supplements. But again, that depends on the budget we have and availability of funds. But these 3 particular administrative supplement programs are offered each year, year round. And so the administrative supplements can be, they are applied for by you guys as PIs, depending upon eligibility. I'll get into that a little bit later. And the focus of these is to improve the diversity of the scientific workforce or to facilitate reentry and reintegration into the workforce for individuals who have taken time off to attend to family needs. The life event supplements are very similar. They're just a little bit different in that for any unforeseen life events that come up, birth of a child, adoption, long medical leave, military absence, things like that. The life event supplement offers a way for you as the PI to sustain the progress of your grant during your absence from the lab, as opposed to you having to leave and your lab loses all its progress or, heaven forbid, it has to shut down. And so that's some of the stuff that the life event supplement will cover. And again, I'll get into additional details about this in a few slides. So these are the NOFO and notice numbers for all 3 of our supplement programs. The main one is our diversity supplements. This is the NOFO number here. And I'll be sure to share a PDF version of the slides with Angie for her to share with everyone who's here. So you'll have access to these links as well, and you'll be able to see all the information as well as follow up with me if you have any additional questions. Then we have the reentry and reintegration supplement, followed by the life event supplement. The reason that the life event supplement has 2 different notice numbers is because there are 2 different opportunities. There's one for those who hold a career development or a K award, and there's a life event supplement opportunity for those who hold what's called a research project grant or an RPG. So for the diversity supplements, this is the supplement program, the administrative supplement program that has been around for the longest. There are multiple ICs at NIH that participate in this particular supplement. So a lot of what I'm showing you here today is going to be specific to NIGMS. And I say that because not all of you are going to have an NIGMS grant, and not all of you are going to be interested in applying under NIGMS. And so I just want to make sure that it's clear that while NIGMS might do A, B, and C, another IC might have different rules. So just keep that in mind when you're thinking through applying for any of these supplements, because the eligibility, the timeline, things like that could differ depending on the IC you're applying under. So the goal of the diversity supplement is to improve the diversity of the research workforce by recruiting and supporting high school all the way through postdoc trainees. And there's also an opportunity to provide support for early career investigators. This is also an eligible supplement for any PI who becomes disabled and needs support to go towards new accommodations for them. This is not usually one of the applications that we get in, but I do think it's a great opportunity, especially for PIs who need it and who have limited resources to allow them to be successful. So this is something that the diversity supplement allows for. I mentioned earlier that there are multiple ICs, or institutes and centers is what IC stands for. There are multiple ICs that participate in the diversity supplement program. So this link here will take you to a page that lists all of the ICs that participate and the contact person for each of those ICs. So again, if you have a grant under, say, NHLBI, and you want to see if they participate in the diversity supplement program, this would be the link that you would use to see if they're on there, and then also find who the contact person is. One thing that we like to emphasize is please be sure to reach out to the IC contact to discuss your application ideas before you apply. And we emphasize this again because of what I mentioned earlier. Each IC has their own process. Some of the eligibilities are a little different. Some of the due dates are different. Some of the lengths of support, the type of support is different. So you just want to make sure you understand everything before you go through the time and energy to put together an application. And so I probably should have prompted myself to click the slide, but this is basically saying the same thing that I just mentioned, making sure you reach out to your IC contact before you go through the motions of submitting an application. This is just to make sure you have all your bases covered and you are eligible, and you're able to go from there. So speaking of eligibility, broadly within the diversity supplement notice of funding opportunity, there are eligibility criteria that are listed. This includes candidates need to be U.S. citizens or permanent residents. There are eligibilities for underrepresentation, but examples of this are included in the NOFO. This is not an exhaustive list. So it's not exhaustive that only racial and ethnic groups are eligible or that only individuals with disabilities are eligible. What this list is telling you is that these are some of the groups that we're looking to, support under this diversity supplement, but it's not an exhaustive list. And it also depends upon the culture at the institution. And what I mean by that is, for example, at your institution, if you have a candidate, a female candidate who's applying for a diversity supplement, and she is in astrophysics, and that is a department that is 99.9% men at the PhD level, at the PI level, at the postdoc level, all the above. The data from your institution to show this could point to eligibility for that particular candidate because she is a woman and she's an underrepresented group in a department that is overrepresented by men, if that makes sense. So that just goes to show that, again, these are not an exhaustive list, and having the conversation with your IC prior to applying and discussing your ideas will help to parse out some of the questions you might have about eligibility. For the grantee institution, at the end of the day, the institution themselves are going to be the ones who determine eligibility. So if you say, we have a student who's African American, we think they're eligible, okay, then you think they're eligible. Just provide that information in the application for us to determine if we're going to continue with the review of that application. But we can't say, yes, because they're an African American or because they're a disabled student or because they're a woman, they are then eligible for this award. So eligibility, final determination of eligibility rests upon the shoulders of the institution. We also encourage institutions to identify candidates who are able to enhance the diversity on a national basis. This includes students with disabilities, as well as those who fall into the LGBTQ community. And again, this is why we listed under the grantee institution, for them to identify if these students are eligible. Are there any questions about anything? All right, cool. So, as I mentioned, the supplement itself is a recruitment tool, and it focuses on diversifying the biomedical research workforce. Oh, hi.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
So I am a new faculty and I'm wondering like how this supplement process works. Basically, for example, I have a SC1 grant
Mhm.
and that is funded by NIH, NIGMS. But also I think NIAID has participated in it. So if I apply for this diversity supplement for my student who is like minority Hispanic in this case,
Mhm.
so the funding will be released from the grant or this will be additional funding to support student
Oh,
to
that's a good question. So this is additional funding. It's not monies that come from the grant. This is
uh,
a separate supplement that would go to go to supporting the candidate.
okay. And for example, in my case, like along with the NIGMS, if it is also NIAID, then do I have to contact IC of NIAID or NIGMS?
On your notice of award, um, who did that notice of award come from? Was it from NIGMS or was it from NIAID?
Uh, NIGMS.
So yes, so then you would contact NIGMS because they are the primary holder of your grant.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, good questions. Megan, or Negan, sorry.
Hello. Yes, my name is Negi, and thank you very much for holding this meeting. I'm sorry for the background noise. I'm attending a conference and it's really hard to find a quiet spot. I am the recipient of an R16 award. And then recently I received an email from NIH and NIGMS indicating that I'm eligible to apply for this supplement. I just wanted to know whether this grant can be used for improving my lab. I do computational biology, and then our university, Cal State LA, is a Hispanic serving institution, and all of my student assistants are on financial aid, and they are not underrepresented in the community of the computational biology. I wanted to know whether improving my lab, such as buying some new computers, workstations in order to help them run new simulations is included in this program, or it's just necessarily for hiring the students as an individual.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So this would not be able to cover those sorts of equipment needs, as that would fall under more of an equipment supplement. But I will say that, if you were to apply for a supplement to support, say, a graduate student, there are allowances in that for materials and supplies, I think up to maybe $4,000 or something. But it would be specific to that student who you're applying for the supplement for, not for everybody within the lab. And so that would be more of the case for you, as opposed to you want to be allowed to use the supplement to request any other type of equipment.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, you're saying that in this category, there is also a way for purchasing items for the students and the cap is 94K. Is that correct?
Oh, no. Sorry. I was saying that for materials and supplies, if you were to submit an application to support a graduate student, there are allowances up to $4,000 for materials and supplies. And so that would go towards, or it might also be material, supplies, and travel. So it could be used for them to go to a conference. It could be for them to take a couple of workshops or seminars, things that are going to be included within their career development and research training as part of their application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mhm. Good questions. I think I can't remember who was next, but at the top I see Yolanda.
Yes, hello. Thank you for putting together this awesome workshop, which just came right in the time that it's needed. I have a quick question. So if it seems right here in the first little sentence or statement, it kind of focuses on recruitment. So is there a preference for having a diversity supplement for somebody who's currently in your lab versus somebody who you're trying to get that will be fresh and new to your lab?
Great question. So we do tend to lean towards using it as a recruitment tool.
Mhm.
But if you have a student who's been in your lab and, they might be, for example, you have an undergraduate who might be volunteering in your lab for free, but they're very interested in gaining these research skills and they have an idea of going on to earn a professional degree. It could be MD, PhD, or master's, or a PhD. You could submit a diversity supplement in order to be able to financially support them so they can continue to work in your lab and gain these research skills that are going to help them to be successful for the next steps of their career. And so we don't say it's only used for recruitment. While we do trend a little bit more towards recruitment, we also understand that there are students who have started in labs and that for them to be able to continue and use the knowledge they gain to be successful for the next steps, they might need some financial support, and that could come through a diversity supplement.
Okay, so if you're already somewhat like financially supporting them a bit, they probably wouldn't be a good person for this. There'd be somebody who is not being financially supported.
Right. I would say if they're financially supported on the parent grant, that's a big, we don't say that makes anyone ineligible, but it does lower the priority for funding.
Gotcha. And then final question, I think I submitted this ahead of time, but does the NIH prefer it to be a student, like an undergraduate, graduate student who's you're gonna be applying for this diversity supplement for, or do they prefer it be more like a postdoc that you'll be applying for?
It's whatever, it's whomever comes to your lab and is looking to do research. So we don't have a preference across the educational spectrum. We look to support students who are committed to the work and who are looking to use what they do to help propel them to the next steps of their career.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And next I see Zoo.
Hi, thank you so much for the very informative presentation. And it's really in time because I also received the email from my PO regarding the supplemental programs, and I'm very interested in applying for that. But I do have two questions. So first question is, I wonder if I can use this grant to support the students in my collaborators' lab. Would that be possible?
It depends. So that might be a question we could chat more about offline via email, because there is some language in the NOFO about that. So I want to make sure I can share that language with you, and then we could go through it.
Sounds good. Because I have the second question is whether because I do have a collaborator that associate with my grant, but I also have that not, but I guess we can discuss it offline. The second question is just a little bit clarity. I think you mentioned about in terms of diverse, like what I consider as underrepresentative. So I just want to clarify my understanding. So it's not necessary those underrepresentatives identified by NIH. It could be other ethnicity if we have good definition to define them as underrepresentative, but they have to be either American citizen or permanent resident, right?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I actually emailed the IC's request for a meeting. Should I follow up again for this?
You mean you reached out to us and we haven't responded to you, or?
Yeah, actually, yeah, because I wanted to discuss about those questions. So that's why, yeah.
I would say, yeah, send the email again and just we get a lot of stuff in our inbox, so send it again and I'll make sure to look for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Sangeeta.
Yeah, so I have one more question in continuation of the previous question. So this is like, for example, I have an undergraduate student who is working with me. She is very talented from minority background, and she doesn't have any financial support. So for now, like I have supported her as a part-time RA from my SC1 grant, which is like basic, which you can pay to the undergrad for a year. So if she joins my lab further as a PhD student, can I put her now on this one for this PA? Will she be eligible for it?
For the diversity supplement, she would not necessarily be ineligible, but we would, given that she worked in your lab as an undergrad, if you were to submit an application, we would want to see how things would be different for her as a graduate student. Would there be different projects? What other things would you do to enhance their educational progress? Are there workshops, seminars, things like that? And so we wouldn't look for just for it to be a continuation of the work she did in undergrad. There'd have to be something additional now that they are in a graduate student position.
Okay. And the other question is like, now the SC1 is stopped, but I still have 2 years on it. So will that be eligible for this PA?
It depends. And I think I might have, so like if you see on this slide here at the bottom with SCORE, there's limitations in terms of the education level you can support. And so I'd have to go back to double check what those limitations are. You can also find those on our webpage, where I think it might be SC1 and SC2, you cannot support postdocs, but I'd have to double check on what is allowable at any of the other levels to see if an SC1 would be eligible at all.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sylvia?
Hi, thank you. So I had a follow-up question because I asked you through email for SCORE SC2. From what I understood, it's very limited, and it sounds like I could possibly apply for instructor funding.
I think so, yeah. I'd have to double check our allowances that we put on our webpage, but I think that is correct.
Okay. So if it's, can I use that as a way to support my student?
Well, no, because the instructor, they'd have to, it's somebody who's in maybe not a tenure track position, but they are an investigator type. So that's different from an undergraduate or a pre-doc or a postdoc.
Okay, so instructor would be a completely new hire.
Right, yes, yes.
Okay, and could I ask for like materials and supplies for this instructor?
We'd have to check the language in the NOFO. I can't remember off the top of my head what's allowable for that.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And Mardell. Oh, you're muted.
I was like, make sure I'm not muted. Okay. Hi, so thank you for recognizing me. I've been funded under an R16, and I have come in contact with a trainee that I'm interested to recruit potentially for a post-bac. And the question that I had was whether or not does the project that I designed for the post-bac to engage in need to be intellectually separate from the funded parent award?
No, we want the work that the candidates do to be aligned with the parent grant. And it might not necessarily be their own independent project, but it should progress the science of the parent grant so that, when you submit your RPPRs, you can say, this student worked here, did this, and it's progressing to, one of the aims of your grant or whatever it might be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Angie.
Thank you. There is a question in the chat by Dr. Billick, who, and it might be linked to Dr. Vasquez Salgado's question. Must the person be named in the application, or can the person be named later?
Yes, great question. So the person should be named because this is an application that is going to be specific to that candidate. And so, for pre-docs and post-docs, we expect there to be, and I'll talk about this in a few slides, but we expect there to be a completed IDP, and that IDP will be used to inform the research training plan, the career development plan, and the mentoring plan. So yes, all applications are specific to the student that you're applying for. Good
Thank
question,
you.
very good questions. So yes, so, with the application itself, when it comes to eligibility, some of the things we've been talking about, many of the grants, there are many grants that are eligible, including R01s, R35s, R16s, R15s, DP2s, etc. When you look at the NOFO, it lists the complete list of eligible grants on there, and it's quite an extensive list. And so there are a lot of opportunity for eligibility when it comes to the supplement program. If you are a PI of a training award, a T32 or T34, unfortunately, those are not eligible for diversity supplements. Same with K awards. So if you have a K99 or a K08, things like that, or if any of your students have those awards, at this time, they're not eligible to submit for a diversity supplement. We talked about SCORE a little bit. We have some information on our webpage about eligibility on SCORE. We've also included R16s in eligibility, INBRE and COBRE as well. But again, there's some limitations to the eligibility for those, and all of that information is found on our webpage. So I'm not going to go through both of these tables, but this is just a way for you to see the educational levels that we support and how long that support typically is. For all of our diversity supplements, the maximum length of support is 24 months. And so what that means is two things. If you are a new PI, and for example, you have an R01, and you want to bring in a pre-doc, you could submit a diversity supplement and request support for up to 24 months. But say you are a PI who has an R01 that's in year 2 or halfway through year 2, and you only have maybe 18 months left on the grant. You would not be able to request 24 months of support. The support goes to the end of the active period of the parent grant. So if you have 18 months left of support, that's the maximum amount of support you can request when you submit an application. Ernesto. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. For in this type of supplemental award, is it possible to have multiple personnel in there, like for example, graduate students and 2 undergraduate students to form a team?
So, great question. Are you saying in terms of like you would apply for support for multiple graduate students, or you're just having multiple graduate students work on the same project?
So 1 graduate students and 2 undergraduate students.
Got it. So we allow, and it's in this table here, we allow up to 3 high school or 3 undergraduate applications per active parent grant. These are individual applications. So Ernesto, if you had 3 undergraduates who are interested in joining your lab, depending on the grant that you have, with eligibility and stuff, you would be able to support up to, or you would be able to submit 3 individual applications for those undergrads. You could also support on the same active parent grant up to 1 postbac, pre-doc, postdoc, or faculty member or investigator. And so for any active parent award, you can submit up to 4 individual applications, 3 undergrads and 1 at one of the other levels.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I forgot to mention master's students. We also support master's students now. And this is another chart. I'm not going to read through everything, but you'll have all this information when I share the slides with Angie. But these are the 3 main areas of any application you submit that we are going to look for. What I mentioned earlier, where each application is individualized to the candidate you're requesting support for. This is where that individuality comes into play. their research experience is going to be individualized. It can be informed by a completed IDP, depending upon the level of the student. We know IDPs aren't really useful for postdocs or undergraduates, but they are very useful for pre-docs and postdocs. The mentoring plan should be individualized. The career development plan especially should be individualized. And I'd like to emphasize that with the career development plan, we are looking for things that go beyond what is offered at the institutional level. So if you have a graduate student that matriculates to your institution and they are already required to take 4 classes in their first year and attend 2 workshops, if you put that into your application as this is what they're going to do under the diversity supplement, you don't really need a diversity supplement because you're not trying to support them to do anything beyond what the institution's already requiring. We really want you to think about and think outside the box. And this is why we say it should be informed by a completed IDP. Are there specific conferences that they should attend? Can they go to career development workshops that are offered through scientific societies or, at other institutions over the summer, things like that. So really get creative in your thought process when you're putting together these applications, especially the career development plan, because we want to see that you're really devoted to providing an opportunity and resources for this candidate to be successful for wherever they go not only once the diversity supplement is complete, but once they graduate at whatever level they are currently at. All right, and so I have a little bit of information here about the diversity supplement being used to support independent investigators. I know I have a lot of verbiage here. I'm not going to read through it, but I will say that if you are interested in supporting an independent investigator, definitely reach out to us because there are a couple different scenarios and they're listed in the NOFO about what is allowed at the independent investigator level. And so you can, it's the timing of the support and the length of the support is what is mostly different from the other educational levels. So as I mentioned before, for all of our diversity supplements, we allow up to a maximum of 24 months of support. I believe at the investigator level, that changes a little bit. I think for some, at minimum, it could be 9 months of support, and at maximum, it might go up to 36 months of support. But I encourage you to reach out just to discuss with us, especially if you're interested in applying for an independent investigator. All right, before I move on, are there any other questions related to the diversity supplement program?
Yes, I have a question. Sorry.
Yes, please.
I have a question related with the number of pages for each applicant. So the number of pages is same for all levels? What is
So the page limitations depend upon the type of parent grant you have. So with an R01, I believe you're allowed, 12 pages for your research training plan? And if you have an R35, I think it's 6 pages. And so whatever the activity code of the parent grant is, those are the page limits you're, chained to when it comes to the diversity supplement. Did that answer your question, Pablo?
Yeah, for example, for R16, so the number of pages for training is 6 pages and for the research strategy are another 6 pages.
So I think, and I will say that because this is an internal review process, we aren't as strict as if you were submitting through regular channels like you would for your R16 or for an SC1 or any other activity code. And so we do say there's a limit of 6 pages because of the activity code of the parent grant. But we also tell PIs, for the research experience plan, it could be 1 to 3 pages long. For the mentoring plan, 1 to 2 pages long. And for the career development plan, 2 to 4 pages long. Some people go a little bit above, some people are a little bit below. Others are right in the middle. But that's usually the amount of space a typical application needs to write each of these plans. And so if you were to hit 7 or 8 pages, but your parent grant had a page limit of 6 pages, we aren't going to withdraw your application for the diversity supplement. So we don't want PIs to send us like a 50-page development plan or a 50-page application itself. So that's why we limit it to what the parent grant page limitations are, but we also understand that each of these individual plans can be, like I said, 1 to 3 pages, 1 to 2, 2 to 4 in length. Any other questions?
So I have another question in continuation of this. So you mentioned that we can apply for, if the grant permits, 3 undergrads and 1 pre-doc or postdoc. So like the page limit you mentioned is like total for all these 4 individuals, right? Not for.
No, remember, each candidate you're trying to apply for is an individual application. So the page limitations are for that application.
Got it. Thank you.
Good questions. All right, so I'll next talk about 2 of our other supplement programs. These are a little bit newer in terms of availability. The first is the re-entry supplement. And this has the intention of providing mentored research opportunities for those who have left science and are looking to come back. And so you need to have been gone for a minimum of 1 year in order to re-enter the biomedical research workforce. And so for most of the applications we see for this, these are for women who have had children and went on maternity leave, or those who have had an extended hospital stay, serious medical leave, family issues, things like that. It's it's sort of similar to the life event supplement, which I'll talk about soon. But the major difference here is that you have been gone from the bench for some time, and now you're looking to come back in. And so we know a lot of times that when you're looking to do that, labs might not have money for you. They're already supporting other students, or they just don't have any money left on their grant. So this provides an opportunity. If you see a lab you're interested in, or if there's a student who's like, hey, I've been gone for 5 years, I'm really interested in your work, I'd like to come back, you can apply for a re-entry supplement for them to allow them time to come back into the biomedical research workforce, start to gain their feet again so they can move on to the next step they have for themselves, whether it's continuation of the PhD or movement into PhD, things like that. For the reintegration supplement, it's a little bit different. This one is focused on pre-docs and postdocs who are in a discriminatory or unsafe environment and they're looking to leave. And so we know a lot of times students can find themselves in these situations. And because they're afraid of losing funding or leaving the institute altogether, they might decide, I need to stay in this environment because I need to earn my degree. What the reintegration supplement allows is for the student to find a new lab, a new safe lab, a new lab that is non-discriminatory, and the PI of that lab, if they don't have any funds to support that student, can apply for a reintegration supplement that will provide funds for that student to transition to the new lab and continue their work. So this one is fairly new. I think we've had it for the last 4 to 5 years, but it's a really great opportunity for you to support your candidates, or if you know of a student who is in an unsafe lab environment or a discriminatory environment and they're looking to leave, you can let them know about this supplement. And if they find a PI they're interested in joining their lab, they can talk to the PI, depending upon if that PI has any, NIH funds, or not funds, NIH grants. But they could use this supplement as a way to transition into a safer environment. And so a little bit of eligibility for both of these. For re-entry, you have to have a doctoral degree, or if you were a pre-doc at the time you left, that also makes you eligible to utilize the re-entry supplement. And the career interruption minimum is 6 months. So if you've been gone for a minimum of 6 months and you're looking to come back into the scientific workforce, the reentry supplement could be an option. And if you can find a PI who has an eligible grant, again, the reentry supplement could be an option. Same for the reintegration supplement. If you have a student who's looking to leave an unsafe, unhealthy, discriminatory environment, and they found a PI who has an eligible grant, they could utilize the supplement to make that move to a more safer environment and lab. In terms of timeline for this grant or for the supplement, it's a little different from the diversity supplements, where these can be awarded for up to 3 years of support. But again, if you only have 18 months or 2 years left on your parent grant, then that's the maximum amount of time you can request support for. But for our diversity supplements, the maximum allowance of support is 24 months. For the reentry and reintegration supplements, it's a maximum allowance of 3 years of support. And I encourage you again to make sure, and I have them here and also here, make sure you read through the notices for both of these programs to look at all the different eligibility requirements, as well as some of the other intricacies and the details. Sangeeta.
So my question is, like, does it includes the no cost extension, or it's just when the parent grant is ending? That's it.
At present time, it's really when the parent grant ends, because, and I guess it depends, if you follow through with the no cost extension, because the no cost extension is not automatic. The first year, I believe, of a no cost extension, you don't have to request it, but you sort of go into the system and you click a button. I think that's a conversation that if your parent grant doesn't have a lot of time, but you're planning on doing a no cost extension, that's a conversation we would encourage you to reach out to us about, to see what is allowable, and something we would talk with our grants management specialist colleagues about, to see what policy-wise we're allowed to do in that situation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Angie?
We have a question from the chat from Dr. Buyan, and apologies if I'm misinterpreting it. Do you allow 2 supplement grants for the same candidate from different parent grants?
Good question. So we probably would not. And I say that because I'll use the example of a pre-doc student, of a graduate student. If you had say you had an R01, as well as, or say you had 2 active R01s, both under NIGMS. You applied for a diversity supplement under one of them, and it was awarded. Your graduate student is going to receive, stipend support, tuition remission, things like that. If you were to apply for that same student under your second R01 to try to, maybe double what they're getting, that would put them out of what all postdocs or pre-docs are getting at that same level. And so that's one of the reasons it would most likely not be allowed, because there'd be no reason for you to have that much support for one student. Now, another reason it would not be allowed is just because the name would flag in our system as somebody who is already receiving support. And so the chances of this second application being recommended for funding would be a very low priority.
Thank you.
Edward.
Hi, yeah, thanks. Are the R16s eligible for these reentry?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but it'll be listed in the notice of in the notice for these ones.
And I was looking through it. It's hard to find that. Is there a specific place you look for that?
If you click on this notice here, all of the eligible grant activity should be listed at the top. And like I said, I'll be sharing these slides. But if you can't find it, please feel free to reach out to me.
Okay, thanks. It's not. I don't think it's so easy to find, but I'll keep looking.
Okay, and again, if you can't find it, just shoot me an email while we're here today, and once we're done, I can follow up with you. All right. Any other questions before I move on from reentry and reintegration? All right, excellent. So the last supplement I'd like to talk to you about are our life event supplements, or they have a really long name. I just call them life event supplements. There are two opportunities for this. There's the life event supplement for those who have an awarded career development or K award. And then there are life event supplements for those who are first-time RPG recipients or research project grant recipients. So if you are, depending on the activity code and if it's eligible, I always go with RO1s because they seem to be eligible across the board. So if you were a first-time recipient of an RO1 and 1 year later you decide we'd like to expand our family, I'm going to need to go on maternity leave, the life event supplement would be a great opportunity for you to take advantage of because it allows up to 12 months of support, I believe a maximum direct cost request of $70,000 in order for you to keep the progress of your lab going during your leave from the lab. And so the $70,000 direct cost that you can request can be used for many things. It can be used to hire a research assistant or a postdoc to continue your work. It could be used to send samples for analysis while you're away to a facility or another location. It could be used to pay for conference travel for those who are remaining in your lab in order to talk about the science, build collaborations, and move things forward. And so within the notices for both of these, it describes, and as well as on our webpage, which is linked down here, it describes some of the events or some of the options that you could use a life event for if you were to submit an application. Oops, so I only had one slide for that. Sorry, I thought I had more. Sangeeta.
So, thank you. So how does this work? So for example, a faculty has received this RO1 grant, and after 1 year, they want to take a break for a year or 6 months because of maternity. So what happens with the parent award? Does it get like funded after 1 year, or it is a break and we can apply for this, or?
No, so with the supplements, again, it's going to be outside money from the parent grant that's added on top of what you're already receiving on the parent grant. And so the example I used was just an example, but it could be, any eligible RPG or any eligible K award. So we have K99 recipients who will utilize this life event supplement because, again, they're at a time where they are going on maternity leave, or they have the birth of a child at home, and they need to use parental leave. And so it's not something that you would utilize after a certain amount of time, or at the beginning of your grant, or towards the end of your grant. It's really just whenever you need it. But this is an opportunity, like if you were to, if you had a K99 and you were like, hey, I'm going to have a baby in 6 months. I need to figure out how my lab is going to continue the work. The life event supplement could be something you take advantage of in order to either hire people or have your samples analyzed or have different things done, depending on whatever you need, what your ideas are, in order so that when you are on maternity leave, the work of your lab does not slow down and it doesn't hinder the progress of your lab. if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
So any other questions on life event supplements? Okay, and if there are, I'll we can come back to it. So as I mentioned before, if you are interested in applying for any of the supplements I talked about today, number one, be sure to carefully read through the NOFO or the notice to check for eligibility criteria. Eligibility in terms of is your parent grant eligible? Or does the student you're looking to support, do they fall under the umbrella of eligibility that's allowed and that's stipulated in the NOFO? And also we encourage, number two, for you to reach out to your program officer under the IC you're looking to apply under. And so for many of you here, you have an NIGMS grant, but if you were to get another grant from another IC, you would reach out to that program officer to see what their eligible or what their rules are for their diversity supplements. Because like I mentioned before, each IC might have subtle differences in terms of when you can apply, how long you can ask for support for, eligibility, things like that. As I mentioned before, the final assessment on eligibility comes from the institution. So you can ask us questions about it, but the final decision is made at the institutional level. We also encourage you to make sure you confirm all of the requirements to put into the application. And this goes back to reading through the NOFO or the notice carefully, making sure you dictate what is required. Do you need transcripts? Do you need bio sketches? Things like that. So you also want to make sure that you are applying at the right time. This comes up because, for example, with NIGMS, we accept diversity supplement applications starting October 1st until May 31st. It's a rolling admissions in between those two dates. So anytime starting October 1st and anytime ending March or May 31st, you can submit a diversity supplement application for the current fiscal year we are in. If you were to apply after May 31st, your application would be rolled over into consideration in the next fiscal year. We also have, general timeline of how long it takes to do reviews. And these are things we would share with you once you reach out to us with your interest in submitting an application. But some of those timelines and those details might differ depending on the IC you're applying under. So again, that's why we encourage you to reach out to the program officer within the IC your parent grant falls under. I touched on this a little bit just now. We have rolling receipt dates. And then we, go through review. It's an internal review process. So this does not go to a study section or a special emphasis panel. This is done through internally through NIGMS. And I believe it's the same. Reviews are done internally across all of the ICs. We do not typically make awards in October or November because those are between fiscal years. And usually our systems have shut down at that point. So if you're ever looking to support a student starting November 1st, it's not going to happen. You're either going to be moved up into the fiscal year, or if it's recommended for funding, you will be moved into the next fiscal year. And one thing we tell applicants, because it has happened in the past, and we anticipate it will continue to happen, but towards the end of the fiscal year, especially starting around May, June, and July, our funds tend to get lower. And so if you submit an application in May looking for support, say starting September 1st, you may or may not be able to get that start date, depending on how much money we have left in our budget. Currently, we don't have a budget because Congress has not set a budget yet. So that is also going to play a role in the review process of any application you submit. Robert.
Thank you very much for this. This has been very helpful. I just had a quick question about multiple PI projects, specifically where you have say sub awards. If there's already one diversity supplement or supplement in general on that award, can another supplement be awarded to one of the other subrecipients on the project?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Good question. So we don't see that a lot. And so it could be more of a case-by-case basis. And so I think in the time that I have been on the diversity supplements, I think I've only seen that happen once. And I want to say both applications were recommended for funding. But it also depends. And so, like I said, that is more of a special case and one that we'd encourage you to reach out to us so that we can, again, talk with our grants management specialist colleagues to figure out if you have a PI and 2 subawards, what is allowed for the subawardees in terms of applying for a diversity supplement.
Great. Thank you very much.
And so I think the last couple of slides, sorry, Sangeeta.
Yeah. So I have a question on this, like for the current cycle, which is already undergoing, I think from October 23rd, and we have till May 31st to submit the supplement, right, in this cycle?
For diversity supplements, yes.
Okay.
I should say that for the reentry, reintegration, and for the life event supplements, we don't have any, we don't have dates in which the application window is for. You can apply all year round, rolling basis, all year round.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yep. Angie.
Yeah, relatedly, Dr. Abel Santos asked about a notice with a more imminent deadline of February. Do you have additional comments on the NOCI on administrative supplements to recognize excellence in diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, the DEIA mentorship?
Yeah, and I don't off the top of my head, because I'm not directly involved with that one. But you can always reach out to me by email, and if I can't answer the question, I can shoot it off to my colleagues who do work with that particular one.
Thanks. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. So one thing I wanted to cover with you guys, because we think it's very important, is common red flags we see in applications. I mentioned this earlier, but we do not want to see a generic training plan. We don't want this training plan that you submit could be used for any student at your institution. These applications should be individualized and informed for that candidate that you are applying for. And so again, you can get creative. We don't have limitations on what you can do in terms of their exposure to opportunities, workshops, seminars, things like that. There, of course, might be some financial limitations of what you can request in the application, but we really do like to see creativity and informative production of these, or I should say informative writing of these career development training plans, professional development training plans. We've also seen applications where there's no career development training proposed. So the applications come in with just a focus on the research training. There has to be a balance. You know, of course, the research is important, but this should also be providing opportunities, again, for your candidate to be successful in the progression of their career. If you're applying for a master's, pre-doc, or postdoc, we really want to see an IDP completed, and that IDP used to inform the activities within the application. If your mentoring plan is written by the candidate, that's a red flag. The candidate should not be writing their own mentoring plan. The mentoring plan should be coming from you as the mentor and should be informed by conversations you have with the candidate about what they're looking for, your mentoring style, how they like to be mentored, things like that. And there are a few other things here, but I think, you know, the top 5 bullet points here are the strongest red flags we see. Of course, there are other little ones, but, you know, again, talking with your program officer or reaching out to us prior to submitting an application can help avoid some of these red flags and pitfalls. And so outside of supplements, because we're here and you guys have access to your candidates, I thought it'd be important to just share with you some other resources we have. I think it was 2022, we held a series of grant writing webinars. And so these webinars are posted online. You should be able to access them through this link, which once again, you'll get access to when I share the slides with Angie. But you can share these with your trainees. Doesn't matter what level they are, but you can share these. We have the webinars on what happens before you start writing, determining whether a funding opportunity is right for you, and then writing a competitive application. So these are really 3 really great webinars that we put on. My colleague Sadella Blatch led this. And so we just think this is a great opportunity or great resource to share with your students. And then there's some other things to share with your students. We have training resources on our webpage. There are also some how to apply training videos out there. There are podcasts from other ICs, but they talk about a lot of great information and topics that are relevant to the candidates that are within your labs and to you guys yourselves as PIs, future applicants. And so the podcast is under NINDS, the IC, NINDS, and the podcast is called Building Up the Nerve. There are also links here for you to access some sample grant applications. And then there's another, you know, also a wealth of information, not just through our webpage, but some of the general NIH web pages as well. And I think I have some of those listed here. So we have our general NIGMS webpage. If you're not already subscribed, I encourage you to subscribe to our feedback loop post. When we have new NOFOs, new notices, information that relates to applying for grants, things like that, we typically put out a blog and it goes to our feedback loop post. And so if you subscribe, anything new we put out, it'll come to your email. And it's just a great way for you to stay up to date and informed on the things that are changing. And so I think that is it. This is our generic DSP Diversity Supplement Program inbox. I encourage you to use this when reaching out to us because there are 3 of us who work on this program. So one of us is always checking it. But if you have specific questions from today, you can always reach out to me directly. I didn't include my email address here, but I know Angie has it. Or you can just Google me. I'm not hard to find, but I'm happy to take any additional questions.